The morning light spilled through the gauzy curtains, painting the kitchen in soft gold. The smell of coffee mingled with the faint scent of lavender candles, Lena Morris's daily ritual. Everything about the house felt calm, orderly, perfect. The pale blue walls, the framed honeymoon photos, even the gentle hum of the refrigerator seemed to whisper stability. She'd worked years to get here, years of loneliness, breakups, and the quiet ache of failed beginnings. Then came Daniel, charming, composed, the kind of man who knew how to make a woman feel seen. He had that steady warmth about him, the kind that made people trust him instantly. When he smiled, the world softened. When he spoke, people listened. Lena often caught herself staring at him across the breakfast table, wondering how she got so lucky. "You're staring again," Daniel teased one morning, flashing that easy grin that melted her defenses. She laughed. "I'm just admiring my husband. Is that a crime?" He chuckled, folding his newspaper. "Depends who you ask." The way he said it, light-hearted but with a trace of something else, stayed in her mind longer than it should have. Their marriage, barely 2 years old, looked perfect from the outside. Daniel worked in real estate, successful enough to afford the quiet suburban life Lena had always dreamed of. They hosted dinners, laughed with neighbors, planned trips. Yet in small moments, unease began to creep through the seams of their life, a flicker she tried not to see. It started with the phone calls. Once or twice, late in the evening, the landline would ring. Daniel would answer before she could reach it, voice dropping low. When she'd ask who it was, he'd smile, that same calm, practiced smile, and say, "Wrong number." Another time, she found him standing in the driveway at midnight, phone pressed to his ear, staring into the dark. He didn't note it. It was her watching from the window. She told herself it was nothing. Everyone had secrets, small ones, maybe work stress, maybe family matters he didn't want to discuss. She'd learned the hard way that pushing too much could break even the strongest bond. Still, she noticed the way he avoided certain topics. When she asked about his childhood, he'd shrug, say, "Small town, nothing exciting." When she asked about old friends, he'd deflect. "You wouldn't know them." And once, when she mentioned having kids, his face changed. Just for a heartbeat, a flicker of fear, before he smiled again. "Someday," he said softly. "Just not yet." It was such a small hesitation, yet it felt enormous. At work, Lena found herself drifting. She'd stare at her screen, imagining what Daniel might be hiding. Then she'd shake it off, telling herself she was overthinking. After all, every love story has its quiet corners, places one partner never fully sees. That night, Daniel came home late, shirt wrinkled, tie loosened. "Client dinner ran long," he said, kissing her forehead. His lips were cold. She wanted to believe him. She did. But when she reached to touch his cheek, he flinched, barely noticeable, yet unmistakable. Later, lying in bed beside him, she watched the shadows on the ceiling. Daniel slept soundly, his breathing deep and even, but his wedding band, resting on the nightstand, glinted under the dim lamp, a circle of gold that suddenly looked like a closed door. Something about that image unsettled her. As she closed her eyes, the house seemed too quiet, the tick of the clock too sharp. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, perfection was only the surface of something far darker. Outside, the wind brushed against the window, rattling it softly, like fingers tapping, asking to be let in. And in the stillness of that perfect life, Lena didn't yet know she had already found the first crack. The next morning began like any other, sunlight spilling across the kitchen floor, the smell of toast and freshly brewed coffee. Yet a faint tension clung to the air, the kind Lena couldn't quite name. Daniel had already left for work, his mug half finished, his jacket gone from the hook. She moved through the house, tidying absent-mindedly, trying to shake off the unease that had followed her from last night. The conversation about his late client dinner replayed in her mind, the way he'd flinched at her touch. Small things. Meaningless, she told herself. Still, something about the house felt different today, like a held breath. Lena went into Daniel's study to grab a pen. It was a room she rarely entered, his private corner filled with real estate files, invoices, and neatly stacked papers. The faint scent of cedar polish lingered. His desk, always perfectly organized, gleamed in the morning light. She pulled open a drawer. Pens, sticky notes, business cards. The second drawer. Receipts, property forms. Then her fingers brushed against something that didn't move. A drawer that wouldn't open. She tried again, tugging gently. Locked. Her brows furrowed. She didn't remember ever seeing a lock there before. Kneeling down, she examined it. A small brass keyhole, discreet and old-fashioned, almost hidden beneath the desk edge. Strange. Daniel never mentioned needing to lock anything. Curiosity flickered. What could he possibly keep locked away? She pressed her ear to the drawer, half smiling at her own ridiculousness, listening for what exactly? Secrets didn't make noise. But the silence behind that drawer felt louder than anything else in the room. A voice in her head whispered to stop, to respect his privacy. Marriage was built on trust. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, said trust doesn't need locks. Before she could decide, the garage door rumbled. Daniel's car. He was home early. Her pulse quickened. Quickly, she stood, smoothing her skirt and stepping away from the desk. He entered moments later, surprise flickering across his face. "Hey, you're in my office?" "I was just looking for a pen," she said lightly. "By the way, when did you get a lock on that drawer?" His expression changed, barely, but enough. His shoulders stiffened, smile faltering for a breath. "What drawer?" "The one that won't open," she replied, pretending casual curiosity. Daniel laughed. Too quickly. "Oh, that. Just work stuff. Contracts, nothing exciting." "Since when do contracts need locks?" she teased, though her tone held a trace of genuine confusion. He turned to her then, and something in his eyes shifted, a flash of warning, there and gone. "Lena," he said softly, "some things are better left alone." For a heartbeat, the air between them thickened. Then he smiled again, gentler now. "I'll get you that pen," he said, rummaging in another drawer. She took it, forcing a smile, her fingers brushing his. His skin felt cold. That night, as Daniel slept beside her, Lena couldn't stop seeing that flicker, the one that turned his warmth into something distant, almost dangerous. And though she told herself it was nothing, her dreams that night were filled with the sound of metal, a drawer clicking shut, a key turning, and something inside waiting to be found. The sound of the phone ringing cut through the quiet afternoon like a blade. Lena had been folding laundry in the living room, sunlight streaming through the blinds, when the old landline on the wall began to buzz insistently. Daniel rarely used it. Most people didn't even know the number. She wiped her hands on a towel and answered. "Hello?" A pause. Then a woman's voice, soft, uncertain, yet strangely familiar. "Hi. Is David there?" Lena frowned. "I'm sorry." "Who?" "David. David Kane. I was told this was his number." Her chest tightened. "You must be mistaken. There's no David here." The line went silent. Then, before Lena could ask who was calling, the woman whispered, "Please, tell him I called. He'll know who I am." The phone clicked dead. Lena stood frozen, staring at the receiver. The name echoed in her head. David Kane. She hung up slowly, trying to make sense of it. David. Not Daniel. When Daniel came home that evening, she decided to ask casually, as if it didn't matter. He kissed her cheek, set his briefcase down, and loosened his tie, humming a tune under his breath. Everything about him looked normal. Too normal. "There was a call today," Lena said, sliding dinner onto the table. "A woman. She asked for someone named David." Daniel's fork paused midway to his mouth. "David?" "Yes." She said his full name. David Kane. The air shifted. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, or maybe fear, before he laughed, the sound slightly forced. "Must have been a wrong number. I get those all the time. Probably telemarketers or a scam." "She didn't sound like a telemarketer," Lena said carefully. "She sounded like she knew you." He waved it off. "Coincidence, honey, don't overthink it." But she noticed his hand, trembling, barely perceptible as he set down his glass of water. Lena smiled, pretending not to notice, though her stomach twisted. The rest of dinner passed in silence. That night, while Daniel showered, she stood by the kitchen window, replaying the woman's voice in her mind. It hadn't been random. There was a quiet pleading in that tone, a kind of sadness that felt personal. "He'll know who I am." When Daniel came out, towel around his shoulders, she watched him closely. "Do you ever go by another name?" she asked, trying to sound teasing. He froze for half a second before forcing a grin. "What, like a secret identity? I wish. No, just boring old Daniel Morris." "Not David?" she said lightly. His smile faltered again, just enough to notice. "No, why?" "Just curious," she murmured, pretending to lose interest. But as he turned away, his shoulders stiffened. He mumbled something under his breath she couldn't quite catch. Maybe frustration, maybe fear. Later, when he went to bed, Lena stayed awake, scrolling through her thoughts like pages she didn't remember writing. She'd built her life around this man, trusted him, loved him. And yet, in small cracks, his mask was slipping. She went to his study, standing in front of that locked drawer again. The brass keyhole gleamed faintly under the desk lamp. She traced her fingers over it, wondering what lay inside. Files, letters, or maybe the truth behind the name David Kane. In the stillness of the room, the phone suddenly buzzed again. The same line, faint and insistent. Her heart leapt. She grabbed it, breath shaking. But this time, when she answered, there was only silence. Then a soft exhale. A woman's breath. Before the call disconnected. Lena's hand trembled as she set the receiver down. She turned slowly toward the hallway, half expecting Daniel to be standing there. But the house was empty, still. From upstairs came the faint sound of footsteps. The morning after the strange phone call, the house felt colder. Even the light filtering through the curtains seemed weaker, as if the sun itself was cautious to enter. Daniel had already left for work, and Lena moved through the rooms like a ghost, the echo of the woman's voice. "He'll know who I am," looping endlessly in her mind. She told herself she needed distraction. Cleaning always helped when her thoughts spiraled. So she started with the study, the one place she'd been avoiding since the drawer incident. The smell of cedar polish and dust lingered in the air. She wiped down the shelves, humming faintly, pretending her hands weren't shaking. That's when she noticed it. A leather photo album wedged between two thick property folders. It was older, edges frayed, something she hadn't seen before. Curious, she pulled it out and blew off the thin layer of dust. The cover read simply, "Memories." She carried it to the table and flipped it open. The first few pages held ordinary moments. Daniel at a beach, smiling with coworkers, holding up a "sold" sign in front of houses. But the photos looked slightly off. His hair was darker, his smile tighter, and in several pictures, a faint scar curved along his jaw, one he didn't have now. As she turned another page, something fluttered loose, an envelope, yellowed with age, tucked between the pages. No name, no address, no seal. Just plain, unmarked paper. Her fingers hesitated over it. A strange heaviness settled in her chest, the kind that comes before bad news. Still, she opened it. Inside was a single folded document. The paper was creased, edges soft from time. Across the top, bold black letters read, "State Correctional Release Form." Her breath caught. Heart pounding, she unfolded it slowly and froze. The photograph stapled in the corner showed Daniel's face, the same eyes, the same smile. But the name beneath it wasn't Daniel Morris. It was David Kane. The words swam in her vision. She reread them again and again, unable to believe what she was seeing. Prisoner number 24876, convicted of manslaughter, released March 2015. A roaring filled her ears. Her hands began to tremble. The paper nearly slipped from her fingers as the room tilted slightly around her. Daniel, her husband, the man who cooked for her, held her hand, whispered forever into her ear, had been in prison for killing someone. She stumbled back, clutching the edge of the table for balance. Every memory suddenly felt different. His guardedness, the late calls, the trembling hands, even the locked drawer. All the moments she'd brushed aside now formed a single, horrifying picture. Her mind flooded with questions. Who had he killed? Why had he changed his name? And what else was he hiding? Lena sank into the nearest chair, staring at the document as if it might vanish if she blinked too long. But the truth didn't vanish. It stared back. Cold, bureaucratic, undeniable. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears, the sound merging with the faint ticking of the clock. She wanted to scream, to confront him, but fear rooted her still. What if he lied again? Worse, what if he didn't? When she finally folded the document and slipped it back into the envelope, her hands felt numb. She returned the photo album exactly where she found it. The house around her seemed to hum with hidden voices, secrets trapped in walls, watching. She looked toward the study door, toward that locked drawer. The brass keyhole gleamed faintly in the light, almost mocking her. By the time Daniel returned that evening, Lena had already made her decision. She wouldn't ask yet. Not until she knew everything. But as she lay in bed that night, eyes open in the dark, the word manslaughter kept echoing through her head, until even the silence began to sound like guilt. The next morning, Lena woke with the dull ache of sleeplessness clinging to her. Daniel's side of the bed was empty, the faint smell of his cologne lingering on the pillow. He had left earlier than usual. She listened to the silence of the house, heart still heavy with what she had found the day before. The envelope burned in her mind. State Correctional Release Form. David Kane. She needed to see it again, to make sure she hadn't imagined it. Moving quietly, she slipped from the bedroom and returned to the study. The morning light fell across the desk in soft slants, illuminating the dust that hung like fog. The album sat where she'd left it, innocuous, almost mocking. Lena opened it with trembling hands and pulled the envelope free. This time, she didn't stop at the first page. There were more papers tucked inside, photocopies, signatures, stamps. One page detailed his conviction. Manslaughter. Domestic altercation resulting in fatality. Her breath caught. Domestic altercation. Someone he lived with. Someone close. She scanned the lines again, but large sections were blacked out. Thick redactions hiding names, dates, even the location. Someone had censored it. Why? Turning the page, she found an official seal. Faint, blurred, almost as if it had been copied too many times. The more she read, the more inconsistencies appeared. A release date crossed out and rewritten, a missing signature, a photograph that looked reprinted. It didn't feel like an authentic government record. It felt altered. Lena's hands began to shake. The realization crawled up her spine like cold water. Maybe Daniel hadn't hidden the file accidentally. Maybe someone had given it to him, or worse, forged it. Her mind churned through questions. Who was the victim? Was it truly manslaughter, or something darker? And why did the name David Kane feel suddenly heavier, like it carried another's? Her story entirely. She found a line near the bottom that made her freeze. Incident classified under Seal Order 17A. Records restricted by court authority. Her throat tightened. A sealed case, hidden from public view. That meant no details, no public access, no closure. Whatever Daniel had done, the truth was buried under layers of protection. She sat back in the chair, staring at the paper, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her husband, the man who laughed in the kitchen, who kissed her forehead every morning, had a past wrapped in secrecy. The more she read, the more she realized she wasn't just uncovering a lie. She was walking into something designed to stay hidden. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Panic surged. She stuffed the papers back into the envelope, slid the album into its place, and turned just as Daniel stepped into the doorway. He smiled faintly. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," she said, forcing her voice steady. He studied her face for a moment too long before nodding. "You should rest more," he murmured, moving past her to grab a folder from the shelf. His fingers brushed the photo album's edge, and Lena's pulse stopped. But he didn't open it. He simply smiled, kissed her cheek, and left again. When the door closed behind him, she released a trembling breath. The air felt thinner now, heavy with unsaid things. She sat back down, staring at the desk. The file wasn't enough. It was incomplete, doctored. If she wanted answers, she'd need to find the real records, the unedited truth. And deep down, Lena already knew where to start looking. The decision to confront him came the next evening. Lena couldn't take the silence anymore. The secrets were eating her from the inside out. The fake smiles at dinner, the polite small talk, the way Daniel's eyes seemed to linger on her just a moment too long, as if he knew she was hiding something too. When he came home that night, the rain had just started. Water dripped from his coat as he hung it on the rack, his tie damp, his hair slicked back. The air felt charged, tense, expectant. "Daniel," Lena began, her voice sharper than she intended. He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. "What's wrong?" She stood in the middle of the living room, the envelope clutched tightly in her hand. "We need to talk." He froze when he saw what she was holding. The color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" "From the study," she said. "It fell out of a photo album." He exhaled slowly, a sound that was almost a laugh. "You went through my things." "I found a prison file, Daniel." Her voice cracked. "Do you really think I wouldn't look? You told me everything about your life, except for the part where you were convicted of manslaughter." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Daniel sat down heavily on the couch, rubbing his hands over his face. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," she said, trembling. "Tell me who David Kane is." He looked up, eyes glistening with something that almost resembled pain. "David Kane was me, a lifetime ago." "Why did you change your name?" "Because I wanted to start over," he said quietly. "I was in prison, yes, but I didn't kill anyone. I took the blame for someone else." Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. "Who?" He hesitated. "Someone I loved." The words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. "You expect me to believe that?" she whispered. I don't expect you to believe anything, Daniel said, his tone oft but controlled. You wanted the truth. That's the truth. It was an accident, a fight that went too far. He stopped, catching himself. It wasn't supposed to happen. She? Lena repeated, voice trembling. The woman who called here? The one asking for David? Daniel's eyes darkened. What woman? Don't lie to me. She said your name. She knew you. He stood abruptly, pacing. You shouldn't have answered that call. So it was her, Lena said, realization hitting her like a blow. Who is she, Daniel? He turned, his face hardening. You don't understand. Talking to her will only bring trouble. She's not who you think she is. You keep saying that, Lena's voice cracked. Then who is she? Who are you? Daniel's jaw clenched. He reached for her, but she stepped back. Lena, he said, softer now. I made mistakes. I paid for them. I wanted to build something good with you. Please don't destroy that. Tears burned her eyes, but the fear inside her grew stronger than the grief. His words sounded too smooth, too carefully placed, like a story rehearsed too many times. You're hiding something, she whispered. He didn't answer. Outside, thunder rolled, low and distant. Daniel sank onto the couch again, covering his face with his hands. When he finally looked up, his expression was raw, yet his eyes were dry. I went to prison because I loved the wrong person, he murmured. That's all you need to know. Lena stared at him, searching for truth, but found only shadows. She wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to find the man she'd fallen in love with somewhere behind those lies. But all she saw now was someone she didn't recognize. That night, long after he'd gone to bed, she sat alone in the dark, the sound of rain echoing against the windows. Her husband's confession had only deepened the mystery. If he truly took the fall for someone he loved, who was that person? And why did she feel like that woman's voice on the phone wasn't done calling? The morning after Daniel's vague confession, the air inside the house felt different, thinner, colder. Lena barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face in the dim light, his lips trembling as he said, I loved the wrong person. She couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was she? By noon, Daniel had left for work, claiming he had an urgent meeting in the city. The moment his car disappeared down the street, Lena moved. She went to the study, his sanctuary, and opened the drawer where she'd found the prison file. Her hands shook, but she pushed through. This time, she checked everything. Behind the folder's worn backing, something caught her eye, a faint bulge beneath the lining. She peeled the paper gently, and a small, faded photograph slipped out. It showed Daniel, or rather, David Kane, younger, his hair longer, face leaner. His arm was wrapped around a woman with sharp blue eyes and a confident smile. She was striking, but there was something unsettling about her gaze, like she was aware of the camera and of the person behind it. On the back of the photo, a single name was written in smudged ink. Mara. Lena sat frozen, the world spinning. The name echoed in her head. Mara. Was she the someone he loved? Was she the reason he went to prison? A quick online search gave her the full name, Mara Jensen. The results were sparse. An old news clipping about a domestic dispute that turned deadly, a brief court record mentioning David Kane as the accused, and a newer listing for a small antique shop 2 towns over. Her stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed for her to stop, but something stronger, the need for truth, pushed her forward. By late afternoon, Lena found herself driving out of the city, rain streaking across her windshield. She told herself it was just a conversation, just closure. But a voice in the back of her mind whispered that she was crossing a line Daniel never wanted her to see past. The antique shop sat at the corner of a quiet street, a flickering sign reading, "Jensen's Finds." Lena stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming softly. The scent of old wood and dust hung heavy in the air. A woman stood behind the counter, sorting through a box of jewelry. Even before she spoke, Lena knew. The same blue eyes, the same sharp smile, older now, but unmistakable. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. Lena's throat felt dry. "Are you Mara Jensen?" Mara's expression shifted instantly. Curiosity, then wariness. "Who's asking?" "My name is Lena Morris," she said quietly. "I think you knew my husband, Daniel Morris." The name landed like a strike. Mara's jaw tightened, her smile fading completely. "Daniel Morris," she repeated. "Or should I say David Kane?" Lena's pulse quickened. "So it's true then. You knew him." Mara looked at her for a long moment, then exhaled, leaning on the counter. "I did, a long time ago. And if you're smart, you'll leave him before he does to you what he did to me." Lena's breath caught. What did he do?" Mara's eyes darkened. "He killed someone, Lena. Maybe not the way the court said he did, but someone still ended up dead because of him. And when he lies, he makes you feel like it's love, until it isn't." Lena shook her head, refusing to believe. "He told me he was framed, that he took the fall for someone he loved." Mara's lips curved into a bitter smile. "That's the part he always gets right. He did take the fall, but not out of love, out of guilt." Silence pressed between them. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second stretching thin. "Go home," Mara said finally, her voice low. "Pack your things and leave. You don't know what he's capable of when he thinks he's about to lose control." Lena stumbled out of the shop into the drizzle, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Her reflection stared back from the car window, pale, trembling, unrecognizable. If Mara was telling the truth, she wasn't living with the man she loved. She was living with the man who'd destroyed someone else's life. And as she started the engine, a text lit up her phone screen. From Daniel. "We need to talk. Don't go anywhere." Her blood ran cold. Lena didn't sleep that night. Daniel's text, "We need to talk. Don't go anywhere," played over and over in her mind. She'd lied, replying that she was home but not feeling well, and stayed in a motel on the edge of town. The neon light outside buzzed through thin curtains, painting her in cold red and blue. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She couldn't rely on Daniel's words or Mara's warnings. She needed proof, something that told the truth without emotion or manipulation. The only place that could give her that was the county courthouse. The building loomed over her like an old judge itself, its marble steps slick from rain. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed as Lena approached the records window. A clerk with wire-rimmed glasses looked up, bored. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Lena said, trying to sound calm. "I'm looking for a criminal record from about 10 years ago. Name, David Kane." The clerk typed lazily. "Middle name?" "I'm not sure. He went to prison for manslaughter." A pause. More typing. Then, a frown. "There's no record of a David Kane convicted of manslaughter in this county." "That's not possible." Her voice cracked. "He served time. There has to be something, a file, a docket, anything." He double-checked, sighing. "If it existed, it's gone now. You can try the state archives, but sometimes cases get sealed." "Why would they seal it?" "Usually for witness protection," he said flatly. "Or if someone doesn't exist anymore." Lena's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Doesn't exist? He shrugged. Erased. New identity. Happens when someone's been cleared, or helped law in. Forcement. Or, he leaned back. When someone powerful wants the past buried. Her pulse roared in her ears. Erased. Buried. Someone had wiped Daniel's life clean. Lena left the courthouse in a fog, clutching nothing but a parking stub. Outside, the world felt sharper, sounds too loud, colors too vivid. Every face she passed seemed to watch her. By the time she reached home, dusk had fallen. The porch light was on, something she never left running. Her heart stumbled. Inside, the air was wrong, heavy, still. She noticed it immediately, her study door slightly ajar. She hadn't left it that way. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it open. The envelope, the one that had held the prison file, was gone. Papers that had been stacked neatly on the desk were scattered. Even her computer screen glowed faintly, a file explorer window still open. Someone had been there. She backed into the hallway, her mind spinning. Had Daniel come home early? Was someone else trying to silence her? The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted her. Tires on gravel, headlights slicing through the blinds. Daniel. Lena darted into the kitchen, forcing herself to breathe. She needed to act normal. She needed time. The front door opened with its usual squeak. Lena? His voice was soft, too soft. You home? She stepped out, heart hammering. Yeah, just got in. Daniel smiled, stepping into the light. His hair was damp from rain, shirt slightly wrinkled, but his eyes, those calm blue eyes, were colder than she'd ever seen them. You look tired, he said gently, setting down his keys. Rough day? Just errands, she managed. He walked toward her, his smile tightening. You know, I had to look for something earlier. Hope you don't mind. That old drawer of mine, I thought I misplaced a few papers. Her chest froze. He knew. She forced a laugh. Oh, did you find what you needed? Not yet. He tilted his head, studying her face. But I will. He brushed past her, the faintest trace of cologne trailing behind, and she caught sight of something glinting near his wrist. A small key hanging from his watch chain, the locked drawer key. He turned back, smiling that calm, perfect smile she once loved. Dinner soon? Lena nodded, unable to speak. As he disappeared into the hallway, her breath came in shallow bursts. Her home wasn't safe anymore. She looked toward the study, toward the missing envelope, the erased past, and felt a truth she could no longer ignore. Daniel wasn't trying to protect his secret. He was protecting himself from her. The storm rolled in without warning that night, thunder cracking, rain slamming against the windows. Lena sat on the couch, staring at the darkened television screen. Daniel was upstairs, humming softly as he showered, acting as if everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Not after the courthouse, not after the missing files, not after the envelope vanished from her desk like it had never existed. Then, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And the house went completely black. Lena froze. Daniel? She called out. No answer. Only the muffled thud of rain on the roof. She reached for her phone, but its screen was dead. The power outage had swallowed everything. Her pulse quickened as she fumbled through the kitchen drawer for a flashlight. When she finally turned it on, the weak beam cut through the dark, narrow, trembling. That's when she heard it. A faint sound from below. Not the hum of pipes or the groan of wood. Something different. Something alive. A soft scrape. Then a shuffle. Her throat tightened. The basement. Daniel had always told her to stay out of there. It's a mess, he'd say. Old boxes, bad wiring. I'll fix it one day. She never questioned it. Until now. The noises came again, clearer this time. A slow dragging sound, then silence. Her legs moved before her mind could stop them. Step by step, she made her way down the narrow basement stairs, the flashlight's beam dancing wildly over concrete walls and old storage bins. The air was damp, cold enough to sting her lungs. "Hello?" she whispered. Nothing. She reached the bottom and swung the light around. Boxes, paint cans, an old bicycle. Then, a shelf. Large, wooden, pressed oddly close against the wall. The sound came again, from behind it. Lena's trembling hands gripped the edge. She pulled. The shelf groaned, heavy and stubborn. One more tug, and it shifted just enough for her to see it. A narrow opening. Hidden. Her light caught on something metallic inside, the edge of a camera lens. Heart pounding, she stepped through. The space beyond was small, maybe 6 feet wide, lined with unfinished wood. The smell of dust and damp concrete was suffocating. On one side, a table. On the table, piles of photographs. She lifted one. It was her. At work, sitting by the window. Another, her at the grocery store. Another, her at the park, with her friend Olivia, laughing. Dozens more. All of her. Some were marked with dates. Others had red pen notes scribbled in the corners. Late meeting. Lied. Phone call. Unknown number. Her stomach turned to ice. He'd been following her, watching, cataloging every move, every lie, every smile, for months. A sound above made her jump. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. "Lena?" Daniel's voice echoed faintly from the top of the stairs. "You down there?" She froze, clutching the flashlight. Her heart thudded so loud she thought he might hear it. He descended one step, then another. Lena grabbed the photographs, shoving a handful into her pocket. She turned off the flashlight and pressed herself against the wall, swallowed by the dark. Daniel's silhouette appeared in the stairwell, tall, calm, familiar. "Power's out," he said, softly. "You shouldn't be down there. Dangerous." His tone was gentle, but something about it, that practiced calm, terrified her. "I was just checking the fuse," she lied, her voice shaking. He paused, the shadows hiding his expression. "You shouldn't go poking around, Lena." The way he said it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Then, lightning flashed outside, illuminating his face for a split second. His eyes cold, calculating, the faintest smile curling his lips. The power snapped back on, and Lena realized she wasn't living with the man she loved. She was living inside his experiment. The morning after the storm, the house smelled of coffee and rain. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, glinting off the polished table where Daniel sat reading the paper as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't nearly caught her in the basement. Lena stood at the counter, her hands steadying a knife as she sliced fruit, too carefully, too slowly. Every sound felt exaggerated, the scrape of the blade, the soft thump of the cutting board, the steady rhythm of his breathing behind her. She'd been awake since dawn, rehearsing her plan. Smile. Stay calm. Pretend. If she could keep him comfortable, predictable, she'd have one chance to leave. She'd already packed a small bag and hidden it in the trunk of her car. By evening, she'd be gone. "Sleep well?" Daniel's voice cut through the silence, calm and warm. Too warm. She forced a smile. "Better than I expected." He folded the newspaper slowly, eyes never leaving her. "Good. You seemed unsettled last night." "I was worried about the storm," she said quickly. "And the power." Daniel nodded, but the corner of his mouth twitched. You went down to the basement, didn't you? Her knife paused mid-slice, just to check the fuse box. He smiled, faint and knowing. You shouldn't have opened that drawer. The words landed like a blade, quiet, precise. Lena turned, her pulse quickening. His gaze was calm, but there was no softness in it anymore. Only calculation. I don't know what you mean, she said, her voice too thin. He stood slowly, folding the newspaper in half. You're not a good liar, Lena. You never have been. That's one of the things I loved about you. The word loved made her skin crawl. Daniel walked closer, his tone almost soothing. You should have come to me. You should have asked instead of sneaking around. She swallowed hard. I just wanted the truth. He chuckled quietly, stopping inches from her. The truth is dangerous in the wrong hands. Their eyes locked. For a moment, neither moved. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between them. Then suddenly he softened, stepping back, his smile returning like a mask sliding into place. I made reservations for dinner tonight, that little Italian place you love. Lena forced a nod, relief and dread tangling inside her. That sounds nice. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, fingers lingering. You deserve a perfect night. The rest of the day was a blur of tension wrapped in silence. Daniel acted like everything was fine, humming while he worked in the study, leaving his phone face down on the counter. But Lena noticed the small things, the way he double-checked the locks, the way his eyes followed her when she moved through the house. By evening, she slipped into a pale blue dress, her heart pounding beneath its fabric. Every breath felt rehearsed, every step strategic. Dinner was candlelit, soft music playing beneath murmured conversations. Daniel poured her wine, smiling across the table as though nothing had fractured between them. To us, he said. Lena raised her glass. To us. The toast clinked, too loud, too final. They ate in silence for a while, the tension thick as smoke. Halfway through the meal, Daniel leaned forward, his smile thinning. Do you ever think about starting over? He asked. She hesitated. What do you mean? He twirled his fork slowly, eyes glinting, in the candlelight. A clean slate. No secrets. No lies. Just one of us left standing. Her stomach twisted. He leaned back, sipping his wine. You look beautiful tonight, Lena. Her hands trembled under the table. She smiled faintly, then excused herself to the restroom. Her cue. Her car keys were in her purse, and the bag was waiting in the trunk. She took one last look in the mirror, her reflection pale and terrified. Then she whispered to herself, Now. But as she stepped out of the restaurant, rain began to fall again, and through the glass, Daniel was watching, smiling. Rain lashed against the windshield as Lena sped down the empty highway, wipers slicing furiously through the storm. The city lights faded behind her, swallowed by darkness. Her hands clenched the steering wheel so tight her knuckles burned. She didn't dare look in the rearview mirror, even though she already knew what she'd see. Headlights. 2 of them. Growing closer. Daniel's car. Her breath came in ragged bursts, a sick rhythm pounding in her ears. She'd left the restaurant quietly, pretending to make a phone call outside. But the moment she heard the sound of his footsteps, she ran. She didn't stop until she was behind the wheel and the rain was screaming on the hood. The road narrowed into the forest. She had planned to take the interstate, to disappear. But now there was no plan, only instinct. A blinding flash of headlights hit her mirrors. Daniel was right behind her. Please, she whispered to herself, just let me get away. He accelerated, closing the distance. The sound of his horn ripped through the storm. Lena swerved sharply onto a dirt trail that cut through the woods. Mud splashed against the car. Branches clawed at the sides like hands. The headlights followed, relentless. She slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a violent stop in a clearing, the engine sputtering. For a moment, all she heard was rain. Then Daniel's car pulled up behind hers. The world seemed to shrink. Lena flung the door open and stumbled out into the storm. Cold water soaked her dress, mud gripping her shoes as she ran into the dark. The trees closed around her like walls, every branch a scream. "Lena!" His voice echoed through the night. Not frantic. Calm. Controlled. She ran harder. Her breath tore through her chest. But his footsteps, heavy, determined, grew closer. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest for a heartbeat. She saw his face then, cutting through the rain, calm, smiling, hunting. Lena ducked behind a tree, covering her mouth to stifle her breathing, but the sound of his boots crunching through wet leaves moved closer. "You shouldn't have opened that drawer," he called softly. "We could have been happy." She grabbed a fallen branch, clutching it like a weapon, her heart pounding like war drums. He stopped a few feet away, his figure half shrouded in rain and shadow. "She did the same thing, you know," he said. "Mara. She looked. She asked. And then she tried to leave me, too." Lightning again. His face lit like a ghost. His eyes burned. Lena stepped out from behind the tree. "What did you do to her, Daniel?" His smile faltered. For the first time, his voice cracked. "I loved her. But she lied. She said she'd never leave, but she did. And when I tried to stop her..." He shook his head. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." The words came like a blade to her chest. "You killed her." His hands flexed at his sides. "It was an accident." "No," Lena said, her voice trembling. "You watched me. You planned everything. This isn't love, Daniel. It's control." His face twisted. "I gave you a perfect life, and you're throwing it away." He lunged. Lena swung the branch, striking his shoulder. He stumbled but grabbed her wrist, yanking her close. Rain soaked their faces, mingling with the heat of his breath. "I won't let you go," he hissed. She fought against his grip, kicking, clawing. His hand found her throat, pussed, hing her back against a tree. For a heartbeat, the world spun in blinding panic. Then, the gun. He pulled it from the back of his belt, pressing the cold barrel beneath her jaw. "If I can't have you..." A flash of movement. Lena slammed her knee into his stomach, sending them both tumbling into the mud. The gun skittered across the ground. They lunged for it at the same time, fingers slipping over wet metal. "Daniel!" she gasped. "Don't!" He wrenched it from the ground, hand trembling. But in his eyes, something flickered. Guilt. Love. Rage. All tangled into one monstrous truth. "You were supposed to stay," he whispered. And then, the shot. The sound tore through the forest, sharp and final. Birds exploded from the trees. Rain swallowed the echo. Lena's body trembled as she stared at him lying motionless on the ground, the gun between them. For a long, breathless moment she couldn't move, couldn't even cry. She had wanted truth. And now she had it, in blood and mud. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. 3 weeks had passed since the night in the woods. The rain had stopped long ago, but in Lena's dreams it never did. The sound still echoed, the downpour, the gunshot, the silence that followed. She was alive, but barely. The safe house the police placed her in sat on the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by open fields and long stretches of road that went nowhere. They told her it was temporary protection, a place to rest while investigators sorted through what had happened. But to Lena, it felt like purgatory, a waiting room between past and afterlife. Each morning, she'd watch the sunrise through lace curtains, clutching a mug of untouched coffee. Her hands still trembled sometimes. The bruise along her throat was fading, but the feeling of Daniel's fingers never really left. She'd given her statement twice, once to the local detectives and once to a federal investigator who'd come in when the case reopened. Daniel's death had raised too many questions, not just about her, but about him. The news reports called it a tragic sea confrontation. They didn't mention the photographs, the surveillance room, the erased prison file. None of it fit the narrative they wanted. The perfect husband, the accidental killer, the grieving widow. But Lena knew the truth didn't fit anywhere. She tried to move through her days as if she were someone else, helping the officer assigned to her, reading the sparse mail she received. But every creak in the hallway, every unfamiliar car outside, made her heart jolt. On the 22nd morning, a plain brown envelope arrived. No return address, no stamps, just her name, handwritten in neat block letters, Lena Morris. Her breath caught. The handwriting looked familiar, though she couldn't place it. She took it to the table, the world narrowing around her. The paper inside was thick, folded several times. When she opened it, the air seemed to vanish from the room. The prison file, the same one she'd found months ago, the same creases, the same faint coffee stain on the corner. Daniel's photo stared back at her, the printed name David Kane stamped across the top in bold ink. But this time, something was different. Tucked inside was a smaller note, written in the same clean handwriting as the envelope. You never really knew him. None of us did. Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped it. She scanned the pages, heart racing. The old conviction for manslaughter was still there. But now, new details had been added. The victim's name, Mara Jensen. Her blood ran cold. There were timestamps, witness statements, police signatures, and one final entry, a date, just a week before Daniel's release. A note in red ink. Case transferred to federal jurisdiction. All records sealed. Lena sank into the chair, the words spinning in her head. Someone had gone through great lengths to erase Daniel's history, and now someone else was determined to make sure she remembered it. The walls of the safe house felt closer suddenly, the silence heavier. She turned the envelope over, looking for a clue, a fingerprint, anything, but there was nothing. Only the faint scent of cigarette smoke clinging to the paper. A knock at the door made her jump. "Lena?" It was Officer Grant, her assigned contact. "You okay? You got a delivery just now?" She hesitated, clutching the file to her chest. "It was just mail." "From who?" "I don't know." Grant frowned but didn't push. "All right, just remember, if anything feels off, call me right away. The department's still sorting through Kane's past. Seems he wasn't the only one with secrets." She nodded weakly as he left, his boots echoing down the hall. When the door shut, Lena unfolded the note again. Her reflection flickered in the window, pale, haunted, unrecognizable. She thought it was over. She thought the truth had died with him in that forest. But as she stared at the file, the ink, the photo, the accusation, she realized Daniel's shadow hadn't vanished. It had only changed shape. Somewhere out there, someone still wanted her to remember. And maybe, just maybe, Daniel hadn't been the only one she never truly knew. The wind rattled the glass, the sound almost like a whisper.